Hey friends, tonight we're stepping gently into the slower rhythms of medieval life. So, before you get comfortable, remember to like and subscribe, only if you enjoy this kind of soft wandering through history. Now, take a slow breath, let your shoulders ease down, and allow yourself to drift with me into the still dark hours of a village morning long ago. You wake before dawn. You pull on the scratchy fabric of your tunic, tug it close for warmth, and begin to shuffle toward the hearth, where a humble breakfast waits. You reach for your tunic, hanging limply on a wooden peg beside the bed. The fabric is coarse wool, stiff in some places, sagging in others, and it gives off the unmistakable aroma of smoke and sweat. This is not because you are careless. It is because medieval life treats washing day as more of an ordeal than a ritual. Soap exists, of course, but it is made of rendered animal fat mixed with ashes, which leaves your garments with a curious scent somewhere between campfire and old stew. You tug the tunic over your head. The wool scratches against your skin, leaving you with the faint impression that you're wearing a blanket that disapproves of you. Underneath, a linen shirt is supposed to act as a buffer, but even that has been worn several days in a row. Linen breathes, yes, but it also remembers every hour of labor you've done in it. Laundry is rare. Clothes are precious. A single set may need to last years, repaired with rough stitches whenever seams threaten to escape. You tighten your belt, a strip of leather that has seen better centuries, and slip your feet into shoes. They are little more than stitched leather pieces tied with thongs thin against the cold, packed earth. Each step feels damp, as though the ground is reminding you that comfort is a luxury, not a guarantee. A faint draft swirls up from the floorboards, carrying with it a blend of scents: straw, smoke, and the faint tang of cabbage that seems to haunt every corner of your home. And here's a small historical fact to soothe you. Most people wore the same set of clothes for both work and rest. Your wardrobe is one, perhaps two outfits, not a collection. Dressing up meant mending the cleaner of the two. The peculiar detail? Some people sprinkled dried lavender or herbs into the folds, partly for scent, partly in the hope that the fragrance would discourage lice. Whether the lice took the hint is another matter. You pause, smoothing down the tunic, and feel the uneven weave under your fingertips. Every thread was spun by hand, each line of fabric the result of hours bent over a wheel. You can sense the human labor stitched into every inch, not a machine's neat consistency, but a patchwork of slightly crooked threads, a visible reminder that nothing here comes easily. Another aside to keep in mind: no one expects you to be pristine. Dirt is part of the landscape, woven into daily life as thoroughly as smoke in the rafters. To be too clean might even appear suspicious, as though you were shirking your work. So take heart. Your less-than-fresh tunic is not a flaw, but a badge of belonging. Your cloak, heavy and smelling faintly of damp wool, waits draped near the hearth. You lift it and swing it over your shoulders, the fabric falling heavily, almost like a shield against the day. It carries the scent of every season: summer dust, autumn rain, and the odd reminder of sheep still lingering long after the wool left their backs. You roll your shoulders, settling into the familiar weight. The clothes may scratch and the shoes may pinch, but they are yours, stitched and patched and worn thin by years of use. Comfort is not the goal here. Survival, warmth, and modesty are. As you fasten the last tie at your collar, your stomach gives a quiet complaint. Clothes may be in place, but the day cannot truly begin without food. The hearth waits, low embers glowing faintly in the darkness, promising the simplest of breakfasts. You shuffle toward the fire where stale bread and weak ale await, the peculiar flavors of a medieval morning meal. You step slowly across the packed earth floor, your shoes whispering against the dust. The hearth is the center of the room, a shallow stone pit darkened with soot, where yesterday's fire has collapsed into glowing embers. A faint line of smoke curls lazily upward, lingering in the rafters where it will stay for days, seasoning the beams with a permanent shade of black. You kneel and stir the coals with an iron poker, coaxing a shy flame back to life. Sparks rise, fragile as fireflies, and for the first time this morning, you feel a hint of warmth against your face. From a shelf carved out of the wall, you take a rough earthenware jug filled with ale. Not the rich, frothy kind sung about in taverns, but a weak, watered-down version made specifically for mornings. It is safer than water, which might carry invisible guests from the well. Not because of an alarm, but because of a far simpler nudge. The straw beneath you crunches and shifts, and one of the resident fleas decides you make an excellent breakfast. Your blanket, a rough piece of wool, has slipped a little during the night, and you feel the chill immediately. The air is sharp, the kind that makes your breath curl in pale mist. It isn't dramatic, just enough to remind you that winter, or something very like it, is always waiting nearby. This small ale contains just enough alcohol to kill off impurities, though not enough to make you tipsy, unless, of course, you drink several jugs before noon, which some people did. Beside it lies a loaf of bread, baked 2 days ago, and now resembling something closer to a building material than a meal. You tear off a chunk and gnaw carefully. The crust resists your teeth, and the interior has that peculiar sour tang that comes when flour is coarse, the yeast uneven, and the storage less than perfect. It is filling, though, and filling is the true measure of food here. Butter waits in a small crock, faintly green at the edges. You spread it anyway. Waste is a modern luxury, not a medieval one. Here's a fact for you. Bread was the cornerstone of diet, making up more than half of an ordinary person's daily calories. And here's the quirky detail. Sometimes, loaves were baked so dense they could double as trenchers, edible plates. After soaking up stew and gravy, you could eat the plate itself or toss it to the dogs. Multi-purpose dining, though not quite what you might consider fine tableware. You sip the ale, cool and a little yeasty. It leaves a faint tang on your tongue, but it washes down the bread easily enough. Breakfast is simple, steady, steady, and not designed for pleasure. The idea of sizzling bacon or fresh fruit every morning is centuries away. For now, sustenance means grain, ale, and the occasional smear of butter. You listen as the house slowly wakes around you. A cough from the corner, a stir of blankets, the creak of timber as someone shifts their weight. Morning is not private. Most households sleep and eat together. Children, parents, sometimes extended family, all in one shared room. The warmth is welcome in winter, though the lack of solitude is perhaps less appealing. Privacy, like sugar, is a rare luxury. The fire brightens, sending a glow across the uneven walls, painting them in shades of amber. The smell of smoke grows thicker, catching at the back of your throat. It clings to your clothes, your hair, everything you own, so much so that smoky is less a scent and more your permanent signature. You take another mouthful of bread, chewing slowly, adjusting to the steady rhythm of the morning. Reality check. You may be romanticizing this scene, imagining the glow of a candlelit breakfast. In truth, your back aches from straw, your teeth ache from bread, and the butter tastes faintly questionable. But, in its quiet way, it is enough. The day has begun, and you are nourished, or at least not hungry enough to complain. You finish your meal, brush the crumbs from your lap, and look toward the growing light outside. The rooster has found his voice at last, and the village will soon stir to full life. Work is waiting in all its damp, heavy forms. You gather the household's laundry, a jumble of linen and wool, preparing for the long trudge to the river, where true labor begins. You shift, adjusting your weight, and the straw mattress whispers back in complaint. It's a lumpy bed, patched with whatever hay or reeds were available last harvest. If you're lucky, it was renewed in the autumn, but by spring it will have compacted into something resembling a wooden board. On the upside, at least it smells faintly sweet when fresh. On the downside, you're never entirely sleeping alone. The little biting companions ensure that. From outside, you hear the muted sounds of a rooster clearing his throat, though even he seems reluctant to begin his duties at this hour. A dog stirs in the yard. The village around you is wrapped in silence, broken only by the occasional creak of timbers settling or the soft sigh of someone else still sleeping nearby. Time here is not measured in minutes and seconds, but in bells and light. 10. The day belongs to the church bell, which will soon call out to remind everyone that prayer comes before work. You rub your arms and glance toward the small shuttered window. Through its cracks, a faint blue light promises that the sun will rise eventually. Until then, you rely on the smoky smell of yesterday's fire, still clinging to your tunic, hanging on a peg. It hasn't been washed recently, and by recently, we mean possibly this month. Soap is lard and ash mixed with good intentions, and washing is done sparingly, which means your clothes are as seasoned as a cast-iron pan. It is at this point you may wonder why anyone longed for the good old days. There's a certain romance to candlelight and cobblestones, yes, but it fades somewhat when you realize your morning begins with fleas and stale air. Still, there is a curious comfort in the simplicity. No calendar alerts, no buzzing notifications, only the rhythm of breath, bells, and birds. You stretch, pulling the wool over your shoulders for a final moment of warmth, and then sit upright. The floor beneath your feet is uneven, packed earth, cool, and a little damp. It greets you like a polite handshake from winter itself. You stand, wrapping your tunic around yourself, and breathe in the smells of the room, old smoke, wool, straw, and something faintly sour that might be last night's stew. It's not fragrant exactly, but it is familiar. The morning routine is not elaborate. There is no splash of scented water, no crisp linen sheets, only a few moments of gathering yourself before the day begins. And here's your first reality check. In a time when the average person might live 40 years if fortunate, you wouldn't want to waste many of them lying in bed. You step toward the door, careful not to wake the others, and you know the day ahead will be full of work. But for now, you pause, listening to the faint hum of silence before dawn. It is peaceful, in its own peculiar way. You sigh as you rise from the hearth, brushing the last crumbs from your tunic. The day's first task looms, laundry. It is not a quick spin in a humming box, not a pleasant half hour with scented detergent and fabric softener. No, here it is an ordeal measured in hours, water, and sore arms. You look at the pile waiting for you in the corner. Shirts of coarse linen, hose that have lost their stretch, and undergarments that seem to stand almost proudly on their own, stiff with the memory of labor. You adjust your grip and mutter under your breath. Laundry is not glamorous work, nor is it forgiving. It requires strong arms and stronger patience. By the time you return home, your hands will be raw, your back aching, and the clothes only slightly less offensive. Here is a simple fact. Rivers and streams were the lifelines of medieval communities. They provided water for cooking, brewing, and washing, though rarely for drinking. Wells were for that. The peculiar detail? Certain villages had strict laws about which parts of the river could be used for washing clothes, brewing ale, or watering animals, lest one task contaminate another. Woe betide the woman caught rinsing her linens upstream from the brewer. You pause to shift the tub again, and a neighbor passes, nodding with quiet solidarity. She carries her own bundle wrapped in a faded cloth. You fall into step together for a while, the silence companionable. Laundry is rarely done alone. It is as much a social gathering as a chore. Conversation helps distract from the chill of the water and the monotony of scrubbing. Besides, gossip travels faster by riverbank than it ever could by messenger. As you draw closer, the sound of running water greets you. Steady, insistent, a soft roar against stone. The path dips downward, lined with bushes that glisten with dew. Birds stir in the branches, their songs bright and insistent. You step carefully, wary of slipping, though a little mud on your cloak is hardly worth noting compared to what awaits. Reality check. You may think of this as quaint, a gentle walk to a scenic river, the promise of sunlight on the water. In truth, you are hauling a cumbersome tub that threatens to topple you into the mud at any moment. Your shoulders ache before you even arrive, and the thought of plunging your hands into icy water does not spark joy. The river appears at last, a wide, shallow stretch where flat stones break the current. Other figures are already there, bent over tubs or crouched on rocks, arms busy, skirts hiked high to keep them dry. Voices drift through the air, greetings, laughter, muttered complaints. You find a space among them, set your tub down with a thud, and straighten your back with relief. The water is clear, though it moves quickly, swirling around stones, tugging at twigs and leaves. It looks cold, and it is. Already your fingers twitch at the thought of what comes next. You kneel, brace yourself, and begin pulling garments from the tub. With a deep breath, you grip the first shirt and prepare to slam it against the rocks, discovering that medieval washing is as much exercise as it is cleaning. You kneel by the riverbank, tugging a shirt from the tub. It is stiff with sweat and soil, the linen gray where it ought to be pale. You dunk it into the water, and the current seizes it at once, dragging the sleeves downstream as though the river itself would like to carry the garment away and be done with it. You tug it back with both hands, the cloth heavy and clinging, and haul it against the smooth rock beside you. With a wooden paddle, worn smooth from years of use, you begin to beat the fabric. Thwack! The sound rings out sharp against the rushing water. Thwack! It echoes along the riverbank, mingling with the rhythm of others working nearby. A strange chorus, water, wood, and the occasional grunt of exertion. The shirt darkens, water dripping down your forearms, soaking into your sleeves. The cold bites immediately, your fingers prickle, then ache, as the river does its quiet work on your skin. This is no delicate laundering. Clothes are slammed and struck, wrung and twisted, with little care for preservation. Fabric wears thin quickly under such punishment, which is why most garments are patched into odd mosaics of cloth. A sleeve may be half new, half old, stitched together like a memory quilt. Here's a fact. The life of a medieval shirt was often less than 2 years before it became too fragile to wear. The quirky detail? Sometimes pieces of those worn-out garments were recycled into candles or even used as bandages, ensuring nothing went to waste. You beat the shirt again, droplets of water spraying upward in protest. The effort is both cleansing and tiring, your arms soon heavy from the motion. Reality check. If you imagined laundry as a calm, scenic affair, think again. This is full-body exercise, the sort that leaves you sore the next day. In fact, if laundry were a medieval sport, you would already be winded halfway through round 1. Beside you, another woman hums softly as she works, her rhythm steady and sure. You crouch and begin sorting, though sorting, in the medieval sense, means separating the obviously filthy from the only slightly less filthy. There is no rainbow of delicate cycles here. Everything gets dunked, beaten, and scoured within an inch of its life. You hold up a linen shirt, pale once, now tinged with the earthy browns and greens of a week's worth of chores. It is dotted with small holes where moths and mice have nibbled their share. You sigh again and toss it onto the heap. A child sits on the grass above, tossing pebbles into the water. Each plop a counterpoint to the beat of washing sticks. You exchange a nod, then return to your task. The community shares this ritual, each of you bound by necessity. The shirt is beaten, twisted, and rinsed again. You squeeze it out with both hands, water gushing through your fingers, then toss it into the tub with a wet slap. The next piece awaits, hose, woolen and heavy, more stubborn than linen. You plunge it into the water, feeling the coarse fibers swell, then strike it against the stone. The sound is deeper now, a dull thud that seems to reverberate in your shoulders. The river flows on, indifferent to your labor. Sunlight begins to glance off its surface, pale and uncertain in the morning chill. You can smell wet wool, ash soap, clinging faintly, and the ever-present tang of the river. Around you, the chatter of neighbors rises and falls. Someone complains about the steward's taxes, another whispers about a cow gone missing. Laundry day is as much about stories as it is about shirts. By the time you pause, your arms tremble from the repetition. You rest the paddle against your knee, flexing your fingers, red and raw from the cold. The tub is filling slowly with freshly pummeled garments, each one heavier than when you began. You sigh, wipe your brow with a damp sleeve, and reach for the next item. You prepare the ash soap and herbs, smearing their peculiar mixture into the fabric, hoping it will make things smell a little fresher, or at least less like a sheepfold. You set the paddle aside and reach for the small pot tucked in the corner of your tub. Inside is a paste the color of wet clay, gritty between your fingers, made from ashes mixed with water. This is your soap, humble, harsh, and faintly smelling of last winter's firewood. You scoop some into your palm and smear it across the damp linen shirt lying on the rock. The fabric soaks it up, darkening further, and you begin to rub. Your hands press firmly, grinding the mixture into the fibers. The shirt resists, rough under your fingertips, and the ash grits like sand. You dip your hands into the water, rinse, and reach for a bundle of crushed soapwort leaves, their juice faintly foaming when rubbed together. Nature's detergent, soft enough for finer cloth, though its scent is less roses and more slightly green swamp. Still, compared to nothing, it feels like luxury. Fact for you, ash lye was the standard for whitening cloth, the alkaline solution stripping away dirt and grease. Quirky detail? If you boiled it too strong, it could eat holes straight through the fabric. Many a shirt has gone to its grave early thanks to an overly ambitious soap maker. You press the mixture into the sleeve, trying not to imagine it disintegrating beneath your efforts. The smell rises, acrid, smoky, mixed with the sharper green of herbs. Together, they create a peculiar aroma, neither pleasant nor wholly unpleasant, but one that will cling to the shirt long after it dries. Reality check. If you dreamed of your clothes emerging with a fresh meadow scent, you'll be disappointed. At best, they will smell faintly of campfire and weeds, which, to be fair, is still an improvement over stale sweat. Around you, other women are scrubbing with the same fervor, voices carrying over the water. Someone laughs, another sighs, and the murmur of gossip floats between the thuds and splashes. You half listen as your hands work. Tales of a neighbor who tried to bake without enough yeast, stories of the priest warning against working on feast days, even a curious rumor that laundry left out overnight might attract wandering spirits. A strange thought, though in truth, foxes and dogs are the more likely thieves. You rub harder, twisting the cloth, then plunge it back into the river. The water rushes over your hands, icy and fast, stripping away some of the paste, but leaving your skin stinging from the cold. You squeeze the fabric, watching the dirty water run brown into the current, and feel a small flicker of satisfaction. For a moment, the shirt looks almost white again, or at least a little less like it was dug from the earth. Your fingers burn now, the lye biting into small cuts you hadn't noticed. You shake your hands, flex them, then reach for another garment. A wooden tub, half split from years of use, waits beside the door. You haul it closer, muscles pulling against the weight. Even empty, it is heavy. Filled with wet cloth, it will test your patience and your back. Into it you throw the garments one by one, the sound a muffled thump of fabric meeting wood. Each piece carries its own scent, smoke from the hearth, sour sweat, and something curiously sharp you cannot quite name. All together, they form a perfume uniquely medieval. Wool this time, thicker, heavier, more stubborn. The ash soap clings to it unevenly, and you rub until your palms ache, the fibers rough like bristles beneath your touch. Each press of your hand is another reminder that cleanliness here is won only through effort. The sun climbs a little higher, spilling light across the water. It glints off the ripples, brightening the faces of those bent at their work. A breeze drifts across the riverbank, carrying with it the mingled scents of wet wool, ash, and damp earth. You pause for a moment, breathing it in, then sigh and return to scrubbing. Laundry waits for no one. With the garments rubbed and heavy with lye, you plunge them back into the river's freezing current, bracing yourself as your fingers go numb in the rinse. You gather the first shirt, now heavy with ash lye, and plunge it deep into the river. The cold strikes at once, sharp, merciless, as if the water has teeth. Your fingers seize and a jolt travels up your arms. You gasp softly, the sound lost beneath the steady rush of the current. The shirt billows in the water, pale fabric twisting like a sluggish fish caught in the flow. You grip tighter, unwilling to let the river claim its prize. You lift and swirl the cloth, letting the current carry away the suds. The ash foam drifts downstream, leaving thin gray streaks on the surface. Your knuckles ache, red and raw, as you wring the shirt again and again. The fibers resist, heavy with water, each twist splashing icy drops onto your face. They trickle down your cheek, cold as sleet. Here's your fact. Rinsing was as important as the scrubbing itself. If too much lye lingered in the cloth, it could irritate the skin or even damage the fabric. The quirky detail? Some people swore by rinsing garments 3 times in running water to wash away not only dirt, but also ill fortune that might have clung to them. Practicality and superstition twine together like threads in the weave. You dunk the shirt again, holding it under, the current tugging greedily. Your fingers begin to lose feeling. It's a peculiar trade. One shirt a little cleaner, 10 of your fingertips a little deader. You glance down at your reddened skin and mutter a small, weary laugh. Reality check. If you thought washing dishes in cool tap water was uncomfortable, imagine an entire day spent with your hands in liquid that feels borrowed from a melted glacier. Beside you, another woman beats her garments against a rock, humming softly through clenched teeth. She pauses to blow on her fingers, rubbing them against her skirts before plunging them back in. Across the water, someone has lost their grip on a tunic, and the garment drifts merrily downstream until a child wades in to catch it, shrieking with laughter as icy water splashes around their legs. You return to your task. Hose, cloak, undergarments, each one dunked, twisted, and wrung. The river gurgles on, indifferent to your suffering. By the time you finish, your tub is piled with dripping cloth, each piece heavy enough to test your balance. Your fingers are numb, stiff, like carved wood. You blow on them, rub them together, Then flex them slowly until sensation returns in tiny stabs of pain. The sun climbs higher, glinting off the water, yet the chill remains. A breeze stirs, lifting damp strands of hair against your cheek. You sigh, shift the weight of the tub, and glance at the garments hanging limply inside. Cleaned, yes, though still a little worse for wear. And then, of course, the next ordeal, drying. For there are no neat rows of clotheslines, no warm machines to finish the work. Here, nature herself decides whether your labor endures or washes away with the next gust of wind. You gather your dripping bundle and begin to drape the garments across bushes and hedges, hoping the sun and wind will finish the task you began with frozen hands. You heave the dripping garments out of the tub, each one heavy as a bucket of stones. The fabric slaps wetly against your arms, sending a chill straight through your cloak. One by one, you carry them up the bank and search for the nearest drying spot. There is no neat line of ropes strung between wooden posts. Instead, you make use of what the landscape offers: bushes, hedges, fences, even the low branches of a tree if you're lucky. You drape a shirt across a thorny hedge. The cloth sags immediately, water dripping steadily onto the grass below. Here is your fact. Washing clothes was often communal, a task shared among women of the village. Sometimes it was even regulated, with rules about where you could rinse your linen so as not to pollute the drinking water. The quirky detail? There were whispers that too much washing could actually damage the sole of a garment, making it thin and fragile, as though the fabric itself might resent being scrubbed. You smooth it flat with your palm, though the thorns snag at the edges, leaving little pulls in the fabric. Still, it is better than letting the shirt lie in the mud. A pair of hose goes over a fence rail, their legs dangling limply like defeated banners. The morning breeze stirs them, setting them swaying in a slow, wet dance. Here's your fact. People often spread laundry across bushes or laid it out in meadows to dry, especially in the summer sun. And the quirky detail? Some households believe that leaving clothing in direct moonlight would attract mischievous spirits who might tangle the threads or even weave bad luck into the seams. A curious excuse, perhaps, for why a garment occasionally disappeared overnight. You return to the tub, lifting a woolen cloak that weighs as much as a child. Water streams from its edges, soaking your shoes as you drag it to a stout fence post. With a grunt, you heave it over, the fabric flopping heavily and dripping steadily. The smell of wet wool rises at once, sharp and unmistakable. You wrinkle your nose, though you know it is the smell of survival. Cloaks may stink when wet, but they keep out the wind when dry. Reality check. If you pictured this as quaint, linens fluttering in the breeze like a painting, remember the truth. The garments are heavy. They take hours if not days to dry, and one sudden rainstorm can undo every ounce of work. You look at the sky nervously, aware that clouds have a peculiar talent for arriving uninvited just when laundry is at its most vulnerable. A neighbor nearby spreads her linens across a row of bushes. She pats them firmly, muttering to herself about the last time her sheets blew into the mud. Another woman stakes down a blanket with stones, pinning it to the grass so the wind cannot claim it. You take the hint and place a few heavy rocks on your own garments, though whether they'll stay put is a gamble. The riverbank soon resembles a field of flags, tunics, hose, cloaks, and shirts, all sagging under their own damp weight. The breeze carries their mingled scents: ash soap, wet wool, river water, drifting like an odd perfume through the morning air. Children dart among the garments, giggling until a mother calls sharply, warning them not to undo hours of labor. You step back at last, wiping your damp hands on your tunic. The garments hang awkwardly, far from elegant, but drying nonetheless. The sun is rising higher, promising warmth to speed the process. For now you have earned a moment's pause, though the next chore will always find you soon enough. With the laundry left to drip and flap in the breeze, you turn toward the river's edge again, considering whether to risk splashing some of that same icy water onto your own skin in a half-hearted attempt at washing. You balance the tub on your hip, and for a moment you reflect, laundry is not just a chore. It is a reminder of survival. Clothes are expensive, often handed down or patched until they are more stitched than original cloth. To keep them wearable is to keep dignity intact. To neglect them would invite whispers, as surely as if you had forgotten your prayers. Another reality check drifts in. You may think of laundry as dull in the modern world, but here it is physically demanding. No soap bubbles drifting in warm water, no fragrant dryer sheets, just ash paste, icy rivers, and hours of scrubbing. And when you are finished, your clothes will still not be clean by any modern standard. At best, they will smell slightly less like sheep and smoke. You tie the bundle tighter, lift the tub against your hip again, and steady your breath. Around you, the house is stirring. A child coughs, someone stirs the fire, and outside, you hear the lowing of cattle in the byre. Morning is in full swing. It is time to leave. The air outside is crisp, cool, with the faint scent of damp earth rising from the ground. The sky is streaked with pale light, the sun still hiding behind the horizon. You adjust your cloak, shift the weight of the tub, and prepare for the long walk ahead. With your bundle balanced, you step out into the village path and begin the slow trudge toward the river, where the cold water waits with its peculiar brand of punishment. You step out into the early morning air, your breath puffing white in front of you. The wooden tub digs into your hip, its rim pressing against bone with every step. The path beneath your feet is uneven, a mix of hard-packed dirt and scattered stones, still damp from yesterday's rain. Each stride sends a faint squelch up through your shoes, reminding you that the world outside is as much mud as it is land. Around you, the village begins to stir. A rooster crows, late to his duty, followed by the hollow thud of an axe splitting wood. The air carries the scent of smoke from a dozen hearths, mingling with the sharper tang of manure from the byres. The sound of a child crying drifts from one cottage, followed by the low murmur of a mother's voice, soothing and resigned. It is the song of morning here, smoke, mud, and tired voices. The weight of the tub grows with each step, not because it is full, but because you know it soon will be. You heave the dripping garments out of the tub, each one heavy as a bucket of stones. The fabric slaps wetly against your arms, sending a chill straight through your cloak. One by one, you carry them up the bank and search for the nearest drying spot. There is no neat line of ropes strung between wooden posts. Instead, you make use of what the landscape offers: bushes, hedges, fences, even the low branches of a tree if you're lucky. You drape a shirt across a thorny hedge. A second splash follows, then a third, and slowly you grow accustomed to the bite of the water. Here's your fact. Medieval people were not strangers to bathing, though they did it less often than you might imagine. Public bathhouses were common in towns, though in villages, washing usually meant a quick rinse in rivers, streams, or wooden tubs. The quirky detail? Some healers warned that too much bathing opened the pores and invited sickness inside, making frequent baths not only impractical but dangerous in the eyes of many. So, cleanliness was often pursued sparingly, more out of necessity than habit. You dip a cloth into the water, wring it out, and rub it across your arms. The fabric is rough, scraping against your skin. Dirt lifts away in streaks, leaving pale patches beneath. The smell of ash soap lingers faintly, mingling with the river's sharper scent. You scrub at your neck, then your hands, trying to ignore how quickly the water chills you. Reality check. If you were picturing a soothing soak with steam and scented oils, abandon the thought now. This is no candlelit bath. It is a hurried splashing in water so cold it makes your bones ache. Your soap is gray paste, your towel is your tunic sleeve, and your bathroom is a patch of riverbank shared with laundry and gossiping neighbors. A woman nearby dunks her toddler into the shallows, the child squealing with indignation as she scrubs his hair with brisk efficiency. He emerges dripping, shivering, but cleaner than before, his curls plastered flat against his head. Another woman dips her own hair into the water, wrings it out, and pats it dry with a cloth, muttering about the knots she'll fight later. The river is not merely a laundry ground, but a washing ground, binding community in shared discomfort. You take another handful of water and pour it over your arms. The chill cuts through, yet you sense a strange clarity. The grime loosens, the weariness of the morning lifts slightly. You dry your skin clumsily against your cloak, shivering but lighter for the effort. The garments behind you flap faintly in the breeze, droplets pattering softly to the earth. The river runs on, tireless, while the chatter of neighbors drifts across the bank. You gather your things, grateful that your body feels a touch cleaner, even if it will not last long. Dirt, after all, waits at every path and every chore. You turn away from the river at last, the tub lighter now, and begin the walk back home, where children cry, chores pile high, and the rhythm of domestic life calls you again. You make your way back along the village path, tub balanced awkwardly against your hip, garments dripping faintly behind you. The morning sun has risen higher now, warming the thatched roofs with pale gold. Smoke drifts lazily from chimneys, carrying with it the mixed scents of peat, dung, and wood, depending on what each household can spare for fuel. Your arms ache from hauling, but home waits, and home never waits quietly. The cottage greets you with a chorus before you even step inside. The thin cry of a baby, the shuffle of children's feet, the clatter of a pot being nudged too close to the fire. You duck under the low lintel, the tub bumping against the doorframe, and are immediately enveloped by warmth and noise. A toddler rushes forward, sticky-faced, tugging at your cloak. Another sits on the floor with a wooden toy horse, chewing more than playing. You set the tub aside and scoop up the smallest child, who wails until offered a scrap of bread softened in ale. This was a common practice, not out of indulgence, but necessity. Milk was scarce, and ale, weak though it was, filled hungry bellies and soothed fussing mouths. Quirky detail: some mothers swore by dipping bread in warm pottage instead, claiming it kept children calmer through the night, though whether that was true or wishful thinking is hard to say. You settle onto a stool, rocking the child gently as you glance around the room. Chores crowd every corner, The cloth sags immediately, water dripping steadily onto the grass below. You smooth it flat with your palm, though the thorns snag at the edges, leaving little pulls in the fabric. Still, it is better than letting the shirt lie in the mud. A pair of hose goes over a fence rail, their legs dangling limply like defeated banners. The morning breeze stirs them, setting them swaying in a slow, wet dance. A pile of wool waits to be carded. A pot hangs over the hearth needing to be stirred, and the floor could use a sweep. There is no pause here, no tidy division between work and home. Every space is both. You comfort a child with one hand and stir the pot with the other, wood spoon scraping slowly around the rim of the iron vessel. Here's your fact. Medieval life was labor divided by gender, yet never idle. Women tended children, spun wool, baked bread, brewed ale, and managed animals, often all within the same day. Men plowed, built, and tended the heavier fields. But in truth, necessity blurred the lines, and everyone worked wherever work called. Reality check. If you imagine home as a restful refuge, set that thought aside. The cottage is not quiet. It is alive, crowded, sometimes chaotic. Privacy is rare and peace even rarer. Children squabble over a scrap of cloth. The fire smokes stubbornly, and a neighbor's voice carries through the thin walls as if she were in the room with you. Yet it is also the heart of your world, warm, alive, and filled with the steady rhythm of survival. The baby drifts off against your shoulder at last, lulled by motion and warmth. You lower him into a cradle made of rough wood, padded with straw. His breathing evens, and for a moment the cottage quiets. You lean back, closing your eyes briefly, listening to the crackle of the hearth and the distant murmur of voices outside. But peace is fleeting. A knock at the door announces a neighbor asking for help. A child tugs at your sleeve, begging for food, and the pot on the fire bubbles over. You rise again, apron damp, arms sore, but steps steady. In this world, tending to others is not an interruption to your life. It is your life. Later, when the pot is stirred and the children soothed, you step out to fetch water from the well, where gossip flows as freely as the buckets. You step out once more, wooden buckets swinging at your side. The path to the well is worn smooth by centuries of feet, pressed deep into the earth like a groove in a song that everyone knows. The air smells faintly sweeter here, touched with the green of nearby fields, though the tang of smoke still drifts on the breeze. Birds chatter in the hedges, their voices lively above the hum of human voices ahead. The well sits at the heart of the village, a rough circle of stones with a wooden beam stretched above. A rope creaks as a bucket is lowered, the sound echoing faintly in the deep hollow. You join the small gathering of women already there, their sleeves rolled high, baskets at their feet. Conversation flows faster than the water itself, weaving stories and news between pulls of the rope. You stand with your bucket resting against your hip and listen. One woman whispers that the miller's wife has birthed another child, though no one seems entirely sure if the timing aligns with the miller's absences. Another swears she saw fox tracks near her henhouse and plans to sleep with a broom by the door to scare the creature off. A third tells of a priest's warning, that washing on Sundays invites demons into the fabric who might tangle the threads or curse the household. You raise your brows quietly. Demons in shirts seem like an oddly petty use of their powers. Here's your fact. Wells were gathering points vital to the survival of every village. Water meant life, and gossip meant community. The quirky detail? Some villagers believe that speaking too loudly over the well would wake the spirits beneath, who might sour the water in retaliation. So the conversations were often punctuated by sudden, hushed tones just in case. You take your turn at the rope, lowering the bucket into the darkness. The rope groans, the pulley squeals faintly, and then comes the satisfying splash below. You draw it up, muscles straining, droplets scattering in the air as the bucket emerges heavy and full. The cool water glimmers in the morning light, reflecting the faces bent curiously toward it. You pour it carefully into your own pail, splashing your feet with a few wayward drops. The chill seeps instantly through your thin shoes. Reality check. If you picture the well as a romantic meeting place, pause that thought. It is hard labor, a rope burn on your palms, water sloshing onto your skirt, and always the chance of dropping the bucket and losing it altogether. But it is also one of the few moments in a day where laughter and companionship ease the burden. The women share more whispers as they haul their loads. A missing chicken here, a rumored tax increase there. Here's your fact. People often spread laundry across bushes or laid it out in meadows to dry, especially in the summer sun. And the quirky detail? Some households believe that leaving clothing in direct moonlight would attract mischievous spirits, who might tangle the threads or even weave bad luck into the seams. A curious excuse, perhaps, for why a garment occasionally disappeared overnight. You return to the tub, lifting a woolen cloak that weighs as much as a child. Someone mentions the Lord's steward passing through soon, and shoulders stiffen. Another recounts how her child caught a chill after splashing in yesterday's puddles. Ordinary stories, but told with urgency, for in small villages, even the smallest detail shapes the rhythm of life. Your pail full, you tip it against your hip and prepare to head home. The voices follow you down the path, fading into the distance. The bucket sloshes with every step, water spilling in little arcs that darken the dirt beneath. Above, the sun edges higher, but clouds drift in from the west, heavy and gray. You glance at the sky and quicken your pace, for nothing undoes a morning's work faster than a sudden downpour, soaking all the laundry you've just hung out to dry. You sense it before it arrives. That peculiar stillness in the air, the kind that makes the hairs on your arms rise. The breeze that once stirred your drying linens fades, and the world holds its breath. Then, with a low rumble in the distance, the clouds split and the first drops fall, fat and cold. Within moments, the drizzle swells into a downpour, drumming against thatched roofs, splashing in the puddles along the path, and most tragically, soaking directly into the garments you so carefully draped across hedges and fences. You break into a run, bucket bumping against your hip, feet slipping in the mud. When you reach the riverbank, your worst suspicion is confirmed. Shirts sag heavily, darker now with fresh rain, cloaks slump like drowned beasts, and hose drip with renewed defiance. You snatch at the nearest garment, the cloth clinging to your fingers as though it enjoys your misery. Another woman beside you groans aloud, wringing her hands as she tries to gather her family's linens before the wind whips them into the mud. Here's your fact. Medieval life was ruled as much by weather as by law. Rain meant not only soggy laundry but ruined harvests, flooding fields, and the ever-present threat of hunger. The quirky detail? Some believed storms were stirred up by witches or brought on by sins left unconfessed, as if your damp cloak were the result of cosmic judgment rather than simple bad luck. You wrestle the heavy cloth into your tub, water pouring down your sleeves in icy rivulets. It twice a touch. Your shoes squelch with every step, and your cloak offers no defense. Wool grows heavier as it grows wetter. A gust of wind rattles the bushes, sending one of your shirts tumbling to the ground. You stoop to snatch it up, only to find it already decorated with a generous patch of mud. Reality check. This is the part of laundry day they don't carve into illuminated manuscripts. Around you, the riverbank transforms into chaos. Children shriek as they dart for shelter. Women curse under their breath as their hard work literally drips away, and the river itself swells with the sudden bounty of rain. The chatter that filled the air moments ago is replaced with frantic footsteps and the slap of wet fabric against tubs and baskets. You gather as much as you can, shoulders hunched against the rain, and start back toward the cottage. Water runs in rivulets down the path, soaking your shoes until your toes are numb. The pail of water you carried earlier has become absurdly redundant. The sky has taken care of any need for washing now. By the time you duck inside, garments dripping in the tub, you are soaked through yourself. Your tunic clings, heavy and cold, and your hair drips steadily onto the earthen floor. The hearth crackles faintly, but the heat barely reaches past the smoky stone. You set the tub down with a wet thud and slump onto a stool, too tired to curse the weather. Laundry will have to dry indoors, hung from rafters where it will drip on your head all night. The rain continues to drum against the roof, relentless as though mocking your efforts, but you smile faintly despite yourself because there is nothing else to do. The laundry is wet again, your work doubled, and yet, this is life, as steady and inevitable as the river itself. As the rain hammers down, you hear another sound, the distinct clatter of hooves and the murmurs of men. The Lord's steward is passing through the village, and with him comes inspection and unease. The rain slackens, leaving the air thick and damp, each drop dripping from the eaves in steady rhythms. You stand in the doorway of your cottage, wringing water from your sleeves when the sound reaches you, the hollow thud of hooves striking the muddied road. Water streams from its edges, soaking your shoes as you drag it to a stout fence post. With a grunt, you heave it over, the fabric flopping heavily and dripping steadily. The smell of wet wool rises at once, sharp and unmistakable. You wrinkle your nose, though you know it is the smell of survival. Cloaks may stink when wet, but they keep out the wind when dry. Reality check. If you pictured this as quaint, linens fluttering in the breeze like a painting, remember the truth. A small procession appears at the edge of the village. The Lord's steward, mounted on a sturdy horse, followed by a handful of men-at-arms whose cloaks glisten with rain. Their arrival stills the chatter in the street. Women tuck children behind skirts, men step from doorways, and you too straighten instinctively, smoothing your damp tunic with nervous fingers. The steward rides slowly, eyes scanning left and right, taking in thatched roofs sagging under rain, smoke drifting from chimneys, and the damp heaps of laundry hanging half-heartedly in the drizzle. He carries a ledger bound in leather, pages fat with ink and mud smears, and from time to time he makes a mark with his quill. It is not a casual stroll. It is inventory, rents, dues, obligations, all written down with the precision of someone whose words can weigh as heavily as a sword. Here's your fact. Stewards acted as the Lord's eyes and hands, ensuring tenants paid their rents in coin, crops, or labor. They had authority to fine, confiscate, even evict if rules were broken. The quirky detail? Some stewards were said to carry small tokens of the Lord's seal, a carved stick or ring, and villagers whispered that even a glance from it could curse your harvest. Whether true or not, no one wanted to test it. The procession halts near the well. A man bends to whisper into the steward's ear, pointing at a cottage with a collapsed roof beam. Another gesture is made toward the mill, where rumor says the miller has been skimming grain. The steward notes it all down, quill scratching despite the damp. You shift uneasily, hoping he does not turn his gaze your way. After all, washing at the river is tolerated, but using the wrong stretch of water or letting ash soap drift downstream into the brewer's section could invite a penalty. Reality check. This is the part of village life you cannot soften with nostalgia. Authority is present, quiet but heavy, and one man with a ledger may hold more power over your day than the rain, the river, or the fleas combined. You keep your head low, eyes on the ground, pretending to busy yourself with your dripping tunic. The steward's horse stamps impatiently, mud splattering its legs. At last, the quill is capped, the ledger closed, and the party moves on toward the manor road. Conversation resumes slowly behind them, hushed at first, then louder, as if the village exhales after holding its breath. A child giggles, a dog barks, and the ordinary hum of life begins to reassert itself. You slip back inside, shoulders loosening now that the threat has passed. The laundry still drips steadily into the tub, and your stomach growls a reminder that morning has given way to afternoon. Rain or no rain, inspection or no inspection, supper must be prepared. You turn toward the hearth where pottage simmers slowly, and salted fish waits to be shared at the evening meal. The garments are heavy. They take hours, if not days, to dry, and one sudden rainstorm can undo every ounce of work. You look at the sky nervously, aware that clouds have a peculiar talent for arriving uninvited just when laundry is at its most vulnerable. A neighbor nearby spreads her linens across a row of bushes. She pats them firmly, muttering to herself about the last time her sheets blew into the mud. Another woman stakes down a blanket with stones, pinning it to the grass so the wind cannot claim it. You take the hint and place a few heavy rocks on your own garments, though whether they'll stay put is a gamble. The riverbank soon resembles a field of flags, tunics, hose, cloaks, and shirts, all sagging under their own damp weight. The breeze carries their mingled scents, ash soap, wet wool, river water, drifting like an odd perfume through the morning air. Children dart among the garments, giggling, until a mother calls sharply, warning them not to undo hours of labor. You step back at last, wiping your damp hands on your tunic. The garments hang awkwardly, far from elegant, but drying nonetheless. The sun is rising higher, promising warmth to speed the process. For now, you have earned a moment's pause, though the next chore will always find you soon enough. With the laundry left to drip and flap in the breeze, you turn toward the river's edge again, considering whether to risk splashing some of that same icy water onto your own skin in a half-hearted attempt at washing. You glance down at your hands, raw from ash and river water. The knuckles are red, the skin cracked, and beneath the fingernails a stubborn line of grime has settled like it intends to stay forever. Your reflection wavers in the river's surface, pale and drawn in the morning light. The garments are spread to dry, and for a brief, reckless moment you consider something unusual, tending to yourself. You kneel at the bank, scoop water in your cupped hands, and splash it across your face. The cold strikes like a slap. Your skin tingles, your breath hitches, and for a second you regret the decision. Yet when the shock fades, you feel oddly refreshed, as though the river has stolen your weariness along with the dirt. The light outside dims, the rain now reduced to a steady drizzle pattering on the thatch. Inside, the hearth glows with the faint orange of coals coaxed into life again. A pot hangs suspended over the fire, its contents bubbling with a slow, comforting rhythm. You lift the lid, and the smell of pottage greets you, earthy and familiar, a blend of barley, root vegetables, and a pinch of whatever herbs could be gathered from the garden. Pottage is the daily fare, the heartbeat of medieval meals. The quirky detail? Some confessors warned parishioners against washing on holy days, claiming that demons might hide in the folds of damp cloth and carry sin into the home. A curious warning, yet one that lingers as you recall rinsing shirts by the river this morning. You bow your head lower, whispering the words, but a part of your mind drifts uneasily. Did using the wrong stretch of river count as sacrilege? Was your haste to rescue laundry from the rain seen as working against God's will? You imagine confessing such a thing, the priest sighing heavily, perhaps assigning a week of bread and water penance for the crime of overzealous laundering. The thought nearly makes you smile, though you suppress it quickly, for laughter has no place here. The chanting continues, voices rising and falling like the tide, the Latin words flowing smoothly, even if not all present understand them fully. You breathe slower, letting the rhythm calm you, soothed by the low drone of devotion around you. The candlelight glows warmly, the shadows less menacing now, and you feel the weight of the day pressing heavier on your eyelids. Reality check. Though the prayers feel eternal, they are not lengthy compared to the labor you left behind. Yet, to your weary body sitting still in the cool church, even a few minutes stretch long enough for your thoughts to wander. You imagine your damp clothes sagging from the rafters back home, dripping steadily onto the floor, each drop echoing in the silence. Somehow it feels fitting, a small reminder that even when you pause, the work does not. At last, the service draws to a close. The priest blesses the gathering, his voice steady, though he, too, seems tired from the day. Villagers file out slowly, cloaks pulled close once more against the mist. You follow, stepping back into the night, the air sharper now, touched with the scent of wet earth. The village grows quiet as each family retreats indoors. Only the steady patter of water dripping from eaves breaks the silence. You walk slowly, body heavy, mind foggy with fatigue, until your cottage comes into view once more. Inside, you spread the damp laundry near the hearth and settle into bed, the garments dripping faintly as you drift toward sleep beneath their shadow. You duck once more beneath the low doorway of your cottage, The warmth of the hearth greets you first, though it is a reluctant warmth, battling against the damp that clings to everything after the rain. Inside, the garments you carried back hang from the rafters, sagging heavily. Droplets fall from sleeves and hems with slow persistence, pattering onto the floor in small, dark spots. It is not a cheerful sight, but it is the only way to dry them. You move about quietly, careful not to disturb the children who have already curled beneath blankets of wool and straw. The baby sighs in his sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling steadily, while an older child murmurs nonsense in a dream. The sound of their breathing mingles with the crackle of the fire and the steady drip, drip, drip from the rafters. In this house, there is always some rhythm playing in the background. You spread your cloak closer to the hearth, hoping the heat will chase away at least some of the wet. The smell rises at once, damp wool mixed with smoke, a scent so thick it seems to rest on your tongue. You sigh, pulling at the laces of your tunic, and sink down onto the straw mattress once more. The straw shifts beneath you, rustling softly, pricking at your skin where it has poked through the fabric. Here's your fact. Beds in most cottages were not private but shared. Families huddled together on straw pallets, conserving warmth in the long nights. The quirky detail? In some places, people hung their laundry above the bed so that body heat during the night helped to dry it faster. A clever use of warmth, though less charming when droplets land on your forehead as you drift into dreams. You tug the blanket up to your chin, its coarse fibers scratching lightly at your cheek. The fire glows low now, embers pulsing softly, their light painting faint shapes across the beams overhead. You close your eyes, listening to the gentle chorus around you, the breathing of children, the sigh of wind at the shutters, and the soft hiss of a damp shirt steaming faintly near the flames. Reality check. If you imagined a cozy medieval bedtime scene, you might want to adjust the picture. It changes little from day to day, save for what scraps happen to be on hand. Today, the broth carries turnips and leeks, chopped small, softening into the grains. You stir with a wooden spoon, watching the steam curl upward. The aroma is hearty, though simple, filling more than it delights. On the table beside the hearth lies a strip of salted fish, tough as leather until boiled. You tear it carefully, flake by flake, and stir it into the pot. It is warm enough to keep the chill at bay, yes, but there are fleas in the straw, smoke in the air, and the occasional drip of water on your nose. Comfort is relative here, measured not by luxury, but by the absence of misery. Tonight, you have eaten, you are dry enough, and that is already fortune. Your limbs grow heavier, the aches of the day seeping deep into the straw beneath you. The smell of damp laundry mingles with the musty sweetness of bedding, a scent oddly soothing in its familiarity. You exhale, long and slow, and let your eyes stay closed. Sleep edges closer, and with it, dreams, strange and wistful, of a world where laundry might wash itself in humming boxes, a thought both absurd and strangely comforting. Sleep comes slowly, curling around you like mist, yet your mind refuses to settle on straw and smoke. Instead, it drifts into peculiar shapes, where the boundaries of your small cottage dissolve and another vision takes hold. You see a box, not of wood or stone, but of smooth, gleaming metal. It hums softly, almost like a lullaby, and inside it clothes spin endlessly in circles, water rushing and retreating as though the river itself had been tamed and placed in service within 4 narrow walls. You watch, bewildered, as shirts and cloaks whirl about without a hand to beat them. No stick to thwack them against rock, no ash paste staining your palms. Soap here is no gray, gritty sludge, but a fragrant powder that releases clouds of scent like wildflowers in spring. The air fills not with the sharpness of wet wool, but with something sweet and unfamiliar, a freshness that clings to cloth as though it has been kissed by sunlight itself. Here's your fact. Even in the medieval world, people sometimes dreamed of magical devices that eased labor. Mills turned rivers into power, looms sped the weaving of cloth, and simple gears multiplied human effort. The quirky detail? Folk tales sometimes whispered of enchanted tubs that could wash clothes on their own, usually thanks to mischievous fairies or house spirits who demanded offerings of cream or bread in return. Perhaps in your dream this box is one of theirs, perfected. You lean closer, peering at the round glass window of the machine. Inside, your own hose and tunic tumble, turning from mud brown to a brightness you have not seen since they were first woven. And when the box stills, another machine, taller, warmer, breathes hot air into the cloth, leaving it dry and soft in a matter of minutes. You reach out to touch the fabric, amazed. No dripping rafters, no smoke-stiff cloaks, no fleas hiding in seams. Only clean, warm clothes, ready without effort. Reality check. Even in dreams, part of you cannot believe it. A humming box that works while you rest? Clothes cleaned without river water or frozen fingers? It is so impossible that you laugh softly in your sleep. And yet the thought lingers, as absurd as it is comforting, that somewhere, sometime, life might be gentler. The dream softens further, the hum of the machine fading into the crackle of your hearth. The glow of imagined buttons dissolves back into candlelight. Slowly you sink deeper into rest, the line between river and dream blurred until only stillness remains. And as your body settles fully into straw and wool, the world of damp tunics and dripping rafters grows quiet, giving way to a long, steady night of sleep. The fire whispers low, the rafters drip in steady rhythm, and your breath joins the hush of the cottage. The day's burdens fall away, the river's chill, the steward's gaze, the rain's mischief. What remains is only peace, simple and deep. You are safe here, warm enough, tired enough, ready to surrender to rest. Let the echoes of work fade into silence. Let the stillness hold you. Let sleep take you gently as dawn waits far off on the horizon. End of script. Sweet dreams. The salt seeps out into the broth, deepening the flavor, masking the turnip's bitterness. Here's your fact. Preserved fish was a staple, especially on church-mandated fasting days which forbade meat. The quirky detail? In some regions, fish salted too heavily was said to keep for months, but it could grow so tough that knives bent before teeth managed to bite. Some even soaked it in ale overnight to soften it, which at least had the benefit of leaving supper pleasantly heady. You ladle the pottage into wooden bowls, handing them around to family members clustered near the fire. Children eat hungrily, slurping noisily, their faces smeared with broth. You tear a chunk of bread to sop up the liquid, the crust softening as it soaks. The fish is chewy, salty, but the warmth of the stew makes it tolerable. Hunger, after all, is the best seasoning, and everyone here knows its edge. Reality check. If you imagine dinner as a grand spread with roasts and spiced wine, think again. For most, meals are variations on the same theme: grain, broth, and whatever the season can offer. Meat is rare, sugar rarer still, and the idea of variety is more hope than habit. Yet, as you swallow another spoonful, you find comfort in its steadiness. The fire crackles, sending sparks upward into the dark rafters. Shadows flicker on the walls, dancing as children play quietly nearby, their bellies full at last. Outside, the drizzle continues, but the cottage feels warmer now, filled with voices and the steady scrape of spoons against bowls. When the bowls are empty, you set them aside, wiping the last bit of broth with bread and eating that too. Nothing is wasted here. Not a crumb, not a flake of fish. Waste is luxury. Survival is thrift. You lean back on the stool, stomach full, body heavy, as the day's labors catch up with you. The church bell tolls faintly in the distance, marking evening prayers. Its low sound drifts across the damp fields, calling the village back to its rhythm of devotion. You rise slowly, cloak draped around your shoulders, and prepare to join the others in the small, smoky church. You step out into the wet evening, heading toward the dimly lit chapel, where prayer mingles with fear that even a simple act, like rinsing socks in the wrong stream, might count as sin. The rain has slowed to a mist, the air damp and cool as you step out into the fading light. The path to the church is slick beneath your shoes, puddles reflecting the dim orange glow of torches lit near the doorway. Villagers file quietly inside, their cloaks heavy with moisture, their breath misting in the twilight. You join them, shoulders hunched against the chill, the day's aches weighing on you with every step. The chapel itself is small, built of rough stone, its walls darkened with smoke from years of candles and rushlights. Inside, the air smells of wax and damp wool, tinged faintly with incense when the priest can afford it. You slide onto a bench, the wood smooth but worn, and fold your hands as the murmured prayers begin. The candle flames flicker, throwing long shadows across the carved figure of the Virgin at the altar. Here's your fact. Prayer structured the medieval day. Bells marked hours of devotion, matins at dawn, vespers at dusk, ensuring every rhythm of labor was wrapped within the rhythm of faith.